Guess who's back? Back again. It's PS2 for the Denver Broncos and Bryce Young, the number one pick last year for the Carolina Panthers. We're talking about this matchup, week 8 of the NFL season, in a special crossover Thursday episode. Locked on Broncos, Locked on Panthers.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
It is already week 8 of the NFL season, and we are getting ready to break down the Denver Broncos hosting the Carolina Panthers in the Mile High City this upcoming weekend. Pat Surtain looks like he may be closing in on a return to the field, and a crazy set of circumstances has potentially here, maybe not even potentially, for sure, brought Bryce Young back to the field. My name is Sayre Bedinger, co-host of the Locked On Broncos podcast. I'm here with Julian Council, host of Locked On Panthers, over there, and we're super excited to break down this matchup for you here in week 8. But got to let you know that today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. And if you know what, Crossover Thursday, we're always brought to you by Prize Picks. And you know what you need to do is you need to download the Prize Picks app and use the code LOCKEDONNFL. You can win $50 instantly when you play just $5. Shout out to all the everydayers out there that make Locked On Broncos, Locked On Panthers your first listen of the day every single day. Julian, super excited to talk about this matchup. I know that I think the last time you and I chatted, the Broncos and Panthers were both not very good. I think it was the Sam Darnold game when he came back and kind of had a really good little late season push for the Panthers. So time flies when you're having fun, I guess, for the Broncos and Panthers. But we got to talk about the biggest story here. It's not Sam Darnold returning to the field this week, but another former high draft pick here for the Carolina Panthers.
Yes, Sarah, and man, wild times here in Carolina. I'm looking at this team. They're 1-6. You would think this is the most boring organization in the NFL to cover. Wrong. There's always something happening. Typically, it's not the best of news. And this week, it's also not great news, but also potentially good news for the team down the road, as Bryce Young will start on Sunday, because Andy Dalton, unfortunately, got in a car accident on Tuesday here in Charlotte. He was picking up his kids from school. Him and his wife, his 3 kids, and their dog were all in the car, got in an accident. They were in a Tesla, apparently, according to Dave Canales, Panthers head coach. Airbags deployed, but they're okay, which is the best news. Saw the reporting from Jonathan Jones, CBS Sports, on Tuesday about that, and the fact that he didn't have to go to the hospital. Neither did his wife or kids or their dog. No one had to be hospitalized, was great news. But you wondered, all right, car accident, like that's obviously still serious. Is he going to practice on Wednesday? Unlikely. Will he play on Sunday? As we found out, not going to be the case, because he sprained his right thumb, which is his throwing hand. He's not going to play in this game. And Bryce Young, who was benched after 2 weeks earlier this season, is back in the saddle. And we're all wondering, is this just for this week? Is this for the weeks to come? Because I've been asked about it. The local media has asked Dave Canales every single week of Andy Dalton being the quarterback if they were going to go back to Bryce Young after that game, even when Andy played well and when Andy did not play well this past Sunday in that loss to Washington. So, yeah, kind of big news. The number 1 overall pick, where you gave up a ton to get him, is now back out there. And we'll see if it's just this week or if things are back on track as far as development of Bryce Young, and fingers crossed him being the franchise.
Right. That's kind of the way that I've been looking at a lot of these teams around the league, or any situation where a veteran who we kind of know what the guy is at any position, and you see these teams kind of, putting young players on ice. The value of that just doesn't seem to be there for me. It's almost just like, all right, why don't you just throw the guy out there and at least see? I know there is sometimes value to sitting and watching and learning things like that, but for a player like Bryce Young, what's your read, or what's your take on how much these last handful of weeks could possibly help him going into this matchup against Denver?
We have seen him a couple times. We saw him against Chicago in that game where the Bears fans are saying, thank you for giving us Caleb Williams and giving us Tariq Stevenson and all those picks and those players. Like 5 guys on the Bears that day helped them win that game. And they were part of that trade where the Panthers, one guy didn't come in until garbage time, where Canales said he was only out there because the Panthers lost their center, Austin Corbett, and their right tackle, Taylor Moton, that day. And he wanted to protect Andy Dalton. So he used Bryce Young as a meat shield at the end of that game, not necessarily for development. And And Canales has never talked about this being a timeout for Bryce to clear his head, to develop behind the scenes, and then to come back and be the guy. He's never been committed to that. Every single time he's asked about Bryce, specifically on Monday, he was asked multiple times, and he said, this is about Andy. This is what's best for the team, never mentioning about it being about Bryce and his future in Carolina. So I didn't love the decision, honestly. I know he was terrible week 1 and week 2, and I sat here and said it. Yeah, he's bad. But the Panthers did not give up DJ Moore, really Christian McCaffrey as well, because they used some of the picks they got from that San Francisco trade in that package with Moore and some of the other picks to get up to number 1 to get Bryce Young. So they did not give those two guys up and bring in Deontay Johnson and bring in these new offensive linemen to bail after 2 weeks. I didn't think so, but Dave Canales certainly decided that was the best thing for the team. It's hard to argue against it based off of how they perform offensively in some of the games compared to how they did the first 2 weeks. We'll see what happens. I still feel like it's over long-term for Bryce. It's good for him to get another opportunity that's only coming because of injury. Canales is still pretty non-committal whether Bryce will be the guy, even if he plays well after Sunday. He's going to take it week to week. He's going to talk to Dan Morgan, the general manager, and Brant Tillis, the VP of football operations. We'll see how it works out, but at least Bryce is getting one more chance to show Carolina what he has, or maybe the rest of the league, who's certainly interested to see whether he's going to be someone they could trade before the deadline or sometime in the offseason.
Well, defensively for the Panthers, I know a lot of Broncos fans obviously familiar with Ejiro Evero and the fact that, Sean Payton tried to bring him back last offseason. He did not want to come back. Obviously, his good friend Nathaniel Hackett fired by the Broncos during his rookie head coaching season. Last season, I was kind of blasted by some Panthers fans, Julian, when I said that, the Panthers defense is Ejiro Evero not doing great outside of Denver. A lot of fans in Carolina took issue with that and said, no, like Ejiro's doing a good job and the defense is just kind of suffering because of the offense. What's your read on that so far this season? Is it a similar type of deal? Because the Panthers, they're 32nd in scoring defense, but is that a result of the offensive issues putting them on the field more? What's your take on the defense and the biggest storyline going into this game against Denver?
Yeah, I mean, that has obviously been a storyline the last couple of weeks. A lot of fans have certainly turned to your position where they want EJ out of Carolina. I felt like last year, considering the fact that Shaq Thompson barely played, JC Horn barely played, they had a plethora of injuries, and the fact that they still, in spite of how bad the offense was, gave them more of an opportunity to win than the offense ever gave the defense. Now, the one time they needed the defense to step up was against the Packers last year, and they didn't do it. But defensively, I thought they were fine. Now, a lot of the numbers will bear out that they weren't really the best defense in the league. They had like 25th in EPA last year, while they were number 4 in total defense. Now, 2 different stats you can look at there. One can tell you a story that, yes, they were good, but were they really? I don't think they were last year, but I didn't think they were as bad, clearly, as they are so far this season, where it's on track to be the worst defense, scoring defense-wise, in the history of the NFL, based off of what we've seen so far. And I think really, once again, comes down to injuries. Derek Brown's out for the rest of the season after tearing his meniscus. Shaq Thompson out again after he tore his Achilles. Jadeveon Clowney, who really hasn't done much anyways, has missed the last 2 games. Josie Jewell, former Bronco, he's missed the last 3 games and don't know if he's going to play on Sunday either. So that's your 2 starting linebackers, your best defensive tackle, some veteran presence there that have not blinked. DJ Woonem, that's a big story. He was signed before Clowney to replace Byron Burns to be an outside linebacker edge rusher, has not played in a single game. They opened up the 21-day window for him on Wednesday. Being realistic, because he has not practiced at all, Sayre. I can't see this guy debuting until after the bye week against Kansas City in week 12. So you're going to get maybe 5 games with DJ Woonem, and this has been the worst pass rush in the NFL. Now, EJ is not really concerned about pass rush. He wants to set the edge, but they can't set the edge and stop the run. I think it's a combination of the talent level significantly dropped off. You don't lose Brian Burns and Frankie Louvu and get better defensively when you replace those guys with Josie Jewell, who's a fine player, but not better than Louvu, and in Clowney, has not been a Pro Bowler since he left Houston. He has never been what we thought he was going to be as a number 1 overall pick. And I was honest about that. People didn't like it. Well, what has he done for you so far, Sue, the first 5 games he's played in Carolina? So I don't look here and really blame Ejiro Evero. I look at the fact that they gave him bad talent. The guys are injured, and it's like, what do you expect him to do at this point in time? I still think he can be a solid defensive coordinator in the right circumstance, and I'm sure he wishes he was still in Denver because that defense has been good. I wish he probably wishes he could have been not held hostage by the owner, David Tepper, and gone to either L.A. to reunite with Sean McVay or to go up to Green Bay to be with Matt LaFleur. Instead, he's saddled with the worst defensive roster in football, and the guys are all on the injury list. It feels like every single week.
Well, one guy who's coming off the injury list, we hope this week, at least for Broncos fans, is cornerback Pat Surtain, who's missed the last 2 games with a concussion. We're going to talk about Pat Surtain's potential return to the field for this game against the Carolina Panthers, as well as biggest storyline on the offensive side of the ball for the Denver Broncos coming up in this crossover Thursday edition. Locked on Broncos, locked on Panthers. Pre-alcohol probiotic drink by Zbiotics is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. And here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make Zbiotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. You may be on the fence about pre-alcohol initially, but you know what? You're hanging out with your friends, and maybe you're watching Thursday night football, or maybe you're watching football on Sunday night. You give it a shot, and believe me, it's the real deal. So here's how to use it. Step 1, drink pre-alcohol. And for the best results, make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night. Step 2, drink responsibly. Pace yourself, hydrate, and get a good night's sleep. And step 3, enjoy tomorrow. Wake up feeling refreshed and ready to take on the day. So go to zbiotics.com/LockedOnNFL to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use LockedOnNFL at checkout. Zbiotics is backed with a 100% money back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code LockedOnNFL at checkout for 15% off. We are talking about Pat Surtain's potential return to the field, as well as whether or not the Broncos are going to be able to start converting some field goals on their offensive drives that have been successful into some touchdowns against the Carolina Panthers. Welcome in once again to a crossover Thursday edition, Locked on Broncos, Locked on Panthers. Sayre Bedinger here with Julian Council. You know that we got you covered every single day for your favorite team right here on the Locked on Podcast Network. If you haven't already done so, hit subscribe wherever you listen or watch the show. Let's talk about Pat Surtain's return to the field. The interesting dynamic here, Julian, when we talk about storylines for this game. Of course, a pair of cornerbacks selected in the 2021 NFL draft in the first round, Pat Surtain, J.C. Horn. The Panthers actually took J.C. before Pat Surtain. I'm sure that gets discussed every once in a while on your end of things there. A lot of Broncos fans liked JC better than Pat Surtain in that draft class. So it's not like everybody over here is bragging all the time on their pre-draft takes there. But Pat has missed the last 2 games due to a concussion that he suffered against the LA Chargers. We've seen the Broncos defense respond differently in both of those games. Against the Chargers, they could not stop a nosebleed on 3rd down. Against the Saints, they had a lot of success against Spencer Rattler. It's going to be interesting to see, though, with Pat coming back this week, how the Panthers deploy their wide receivers and where Pat lines up in any of these matchups.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be curious. Deontay Johnson last week was kind of a relative no-show. I know he's been on the injury report the last couple of weeks of an ankle injury, had 1 reception for 17 yards, and after having that reception, kind of came up gimpy. Then later on, Andy Dalton threw a pick over the middle where he was targeting Johnson, who appeared to break off his route early. Dalton was not happy about that. So we'll see now with Bryce coming back, how that relationship is able to mature. And Adam Thielen as well. He had his 21-day window open up. He had a hamstring injury after scoring that touchdown back in week 3 at Las Vegas. So we'll see whether he's out there. Then young guys like Xavier Legette and Jalen Coker as well have gotten opportunities the last couple of weeks as Thielen has been gone. But yeah, man, that whole situation where JC went to Carolina and then Pat went to Denver, it gets brought up plenty of times here. I've had people say like Carolina clearly picked the wrong guy. I don't know if that's the case. Like Pat Surtain has certainly been a better player when he's been out there than when J.C. Horn has been out there. The problem has been J.C. Horn has not been able to stay healthy for a full season so far in his NFL career. He had missed 29 of a possible 51 games heading into the season. But so far this year, I thought he has played really well. That's a guy that the Panthers, as they appear to be rebuilding once again, are going to want to continue to build around. I don't blame fans or wishing they had Pat Surtain. It's just the injury luck has not been on JC's side. And I'm very excited to see what Surtain's able to do on that side of the ball and what JC's able to do on his side of the ball, and kind of compare those two after this game once again.
Yeah, it should be fun to see. I think that those two guys, obviously very talented young players, who both just need to stay healthy to live out that full potential that they've got. Offensively, the Denver Broncos this year, Julian, they are 31st in the NFL in third down offense. The Carolina Panthers, 31st in third down defense. So we've got a battle of a meeting of the minds, so to speak, here this weekend. Interested to know your thoughts, when you see what the Panthers have done so far this season, which of these two sides, the Broncos offensively struggling on third downs, the Panthers struggling defensively on third downs, like which do you feel is maybe most likely this week to have like a get right game? Because it's been a big time struggle. Like Sean Payton talked about it on Wednesday again. I'm sure that Panthers, head coach Dave Canales has had to talk about this all the time. It's just that money down, third downs, like the two of the worst teams at their respective spots here going at it this weekend. What's your take on which one's going to give this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, it's a movable object versus a stoppable force in this situation. And like the Panthers are actually 30th in offensive third down conversions. No, you're right. You got it right defensively.
Okay.
They're terrible, but offensively, they're not great at converting either. So they're right. They're kind of right there with Denver. As far as this matchup, I have a hard time buying into the Panthers' defense's ability to stop what has not been a great offense, quarterbacked by a rookie in Bo Nix, who has had his ups and downs so far, which is not too surprising for anyone who watched Bo Nix back at Auburn and Oregon, respectively, in college. I would lean probably the Broncos having more success, primarily because when you get to third down, a lot of times you're in some longer down and distances. And if you're able to get pressure on the quarterback, you can really impact him. And a guy like Bo Nix, someone who I've seen in the past make some pretty bad decisions with the football. And yeah, I know he's done that. I know Seattle was one of those weeks early this season where he had some of those issues, but the Panthers can't get pressure on anybody, man. They're the worst pressure percentage team in the NFL, according to Pro Football Reference. Also worse in pass rushing, according to PFF. They have 7 sacks on the season, which somehow is not the lowest in the NFL. The Falcons, the divisional rival, have 6 so far this year. So if it comes down to 3rd and 8, Bo Nix sitting back there, I think he's going to have some time. And he's also pretty doggone athletic, so he can get out there, run it. Saw Caleb Williams do that a couple of times a couple weeks ago when the Panthers faced him in Chicago. I don't have much faith in this defense, especially the pass rush. And I don't know if Clowney's going to play. Not like it would really matter that much because he's not that great of a pass rusher anyways. And I don't expect DJ Woolen to come back either. So yeah, I'd probably lean Denver in that situation, which is saying a lot about where this Panthers defense is at.
It's been very interesting. There's been times this year where it feels like the pressure is really causing Bo Nix to make a lot of bad mistakes. And then there's been, 3 games where he hasn't been sacked a single time. So Sean Payton really liked that about him coming out of the college ranks, that, hey, he doesn't take unnecessary sacks. He's got good, pocket presence and mobility, things like that. And we've seen him utilize that. He's 4th leading rusher among all quarterbacks this season, not just, breaking away from the pass rush, but designed quarterback runs as well. And when you look at this Denver Broncos offense, 225 yards rushing against the New Orleans Saints, the Carolina Panthers giving up over 1,100 yards so far this year. The Broncos will try to exploit that. Where do you feel like, as you look at a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix, like the struggles that he has had when he throws even one interception, the Broncos have lost. I mean, that's the story of their season. He doesn't throw a pick, they're 4-0. He throws a pick, they're 0-3. What do you think this Carolina Panthers defense can do to really get him to make those mistakes that we've seen in the tougher games that he's had?
I think it's going to come down to trying to disguise some coverages and really confuse them, because I don't think they're going to get the pressure. Now, the one times where they have been able to get some turnovers, that has really been because of pressure. I know Joe Burrow had a situation back in week 4 where he just threw an ill-advised throw over the middle trying to find Jamar Chase. That would be the best way to do it. And I tell fans all the time, like, sacks are great, man, but pressure greater than sacks, because you can get those turnovers, especially from younger guys like a Bo Nix can make those mistakes. I think it's kind of comes down to trying to punch out the ball, confuse him, maybe get him to throw some interceptions. A guy like J.C. Horn, especially somebody who can run into one. The only issue is for Carolina, like every game that they have won, which is only one of them, that's the only game they didn't turn the ball over. When they have turned it over, they have lost all 6 of those games, and their opponents are leading them 58-9 points off turnovers. So they have not converted a single turnover so far this season into a touchdown. So they do find a way to turn over Bo Nix. They got to capitalize, but it's going to have to come down to them just confusing the rookie or finding a way to punch at the ball, get it out on the ground more so than being able to get the pressure and force them to make a mistake that way.
Yeah, it's man, taking care of the football is going to be absolutely essential for both of these teams. But not only that, we've got some other keys to victory for both the Broncos and the Panthers here as we approach week 8 already of the NFL season. Time truly does fly, whether or not you're having fun in the NFL. There's no doubt about that. But we're going to have our keys to victory coming up, including obviously taking care of the ball, but a little bit more for that here on today's Crossover Thursday episode. Locked on Broncos, Locked on Panthers. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. So go ahead, take a look at these odds here for the Carolina Panthers and the Denver Broncos. The line is moving around all over the place this week. It's at -9.5 in favor of the Broncos. One of the only times they've been favored this entire season, with the over-under set at 41.5 points. That's actually already moved a little bit since Bryce Young was announced to be starting this weekend. So go ahead, check out FanDuel for all those different bets and props that you can make, same game parlays, player props, and so much more. You know what? There's a lot going on in this game. Whether or not you're a Broncos fan or a Panthers fan, there's something for everybody. And you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So what you want to do is you want to go over to FanDuel.com and check it all out. That's FanDuel.com. Broncos Country, Panthers fans, we are breaking down some keys to victory. We talked about it and teased it a little bit just a bit ago when we talked about taking care of the football, but there's some specific keys to victory for each team in this game here as we approach week 8. Once again, thanks so much, and shout out to all the everydayers out there that make Locked on Broncos, Locked on Panthers your first listen of the day every single day. We really appreciate you for doing so. And Julian, I'm looking forward to this game. It's football season. We can't complain. I'm looking outside. The trees are all changing colors. It's a great time of year if you're a football fan. Let's talk about some keys to victory for the Panthers, because I know Broncos fans have not been used to winning since Super Bowl 50. It's been rough times in Broncos country. Everybody's afraid, even of, it doesn't matter if you're coming in 1-6. It doesn't matter if you're coming in as, they play the Ravens next week. The Broncos country is on pins and needles waiting for this game. So maybe let's do a little fear mongering here for Broncos country. Tell them why the Panthers are going to win this game, or how they can win this game.
Yeah, I got a friend here in Charlotte who is a Broncos fan. He already said to our group chat this week, it's like, yeah, the Broncos are definitely going to find a way to lay an egg to the Panthers. And now with Bryce Young, where, I saw the line. It was like 7.5 a couple days ago. It was 8.5 when I looked at it on Tuesday. On Wednesday, it was at 9.5. So it's like, okay, that had to have obviously been the Bryce Young factor. But I don't know, man. I'm happy you said that about it's football season. And people need to be happy about it, because I get so many fans who are already asking me things that are like off-season February conversation. Like, can we just focus on the football? And focusing on the football on Sunday, the first thing they got to do, they got to show and build confidence in Bryce Young early. You showed after 2 weeks, you being Dave Canales, that you did not believe in this guy. And in seeing the team's overall effort and energy when they just blew the doors off of the Raiders in that game. I know it was final score 36-22. That game was over at the end of the third quarter, y'all. That was a bunch of garbage time that Las Vegas got after that. Bryce just clearly did not have the belief in the team. They got to find a way to get him some quick throws early on, be able to take care of the football, not ask him to do too much throwing down the field, and actually instill some confidence in him. And look, in the first couple of weeks of the season, he was 31st in EPA in week 1 and week 2. And surprisingly, week 1, that was not the worst. It was Deshaun Watson. Week 2, it was the worst, as he really struggled. Second thing got to do, they got to run the ball. That's really their bread and butter. I know Canales talked about all offseason. You want to be stubborn about running the football. That has not really been the case. Panthers are only 23rd in the NFL in rushing attempts per game, where Chuba Hubbard is leading the NFL among rushers with at least 50 attempts, and a rushing success rate at 62.1. This guy has been outstanding so far in the last year's rookie deal. The Panthers, They averaged 123 yards rushing in the last 5 games of Andy Dalton. Only averaged 74 the first 2 games with Bryce Young. Big reason is because they were not able to convert third downs. They were 2 of 22 on third down with Bryce. They've been a little bit better with Andy, only 38%, still not great, but they got to find a way to rush the ball, have success early on, get Bryce in some third and short situations to where he can make some nice throws that aren't too far down the field, have some confidence that can really build towards kind of what we got to see from him in that second half against Green Bay a year ago. And the third thing is, like we talked about, this is not a great Broncos offense. They cannot stay on the field on third down. Their quarterback has made some mistakes, but he's still learning on the job. And look, I love Bo Nix. Love his story. Dude who grew up in Alabama. His dad played at Auburn, always dreamed to go in Auburn, came in there, won his first game. Things were up and down there. Then went to Oregon, turned it around, and became a first-round pick. Would have never thought that was going to be the case, even when he started out at Auburn back in 2019. So good for him to be in this spot. But y'all, Bo Nix is not there yet, and I don't know if he's ever going to be there. The Panthers cannot let a Bo Nix-led offense, much like a Marcus Mariota offense last week, have success against them and go up and down the field like we've seen. So that's really the thing. Don't get embarrassed defensively. Find a way to run the ball, take pressure off of Bryce, and show some confidence and build some confidence in him early in the game, and at least go out there and be respectable.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the key. Anytime anybody's playing the Broncos, you want to absolutely fluster Bo Nix as much as you possibly can. I hate to do this, Julian. This is going to be so corny. I'm going to start off my keys to victory. You're going to hate me for this. I'm going to say number 1, the Broncos got to keep pounding the rock. They've gone 5 straight games with 100+ rushing. I know that's terrible. Don't
Hey,
you know what? Hey, you know, I had to do it. I had to.
Younghoe Koo in the tunnel leaving Bank of America Stadium a couple weeks ago. Younghoe Koo is the Falcons kicker, for those who don't know. He said, keep stanking. So I'd rather your pun of keep pounding than Younghoe Koo, a kicker, out here trolling the Panthers after getting a victory.
That is tough. That is tough. He deserves whatever's coming after that one. I'll say that. But yeah, you want to keep pounding the rock. Number 1 key to victory for the Broncos: 5 straight games with 100+ rushing yards, including, like I said, 225 yards against the New Orleans Saints. Number 2, they need to finish drives with touchdowns, not field goals. That has been a problem pretty much all year, as the Broncos have struggled in the red zone to the tune of, it's not been good. 52.4%, which has improved substantially in recent weeks, even, which is kind of crazy to think about. Number 3, they need to keep that pass rush heat turned up high. And I actually made these keys to victory before we found out about Bryce Young going into the lineup. I don't think that changes. I've already spoiled this for everybody that's listening for the entire season, Julian, that I'm going to have rush the quarterback on there as one of the keys to victory every week, because when you can get after the quarterback, it creates opportunities for your offense, right? That's exactly what you want to do out there. You mentioned that the Atlanta Falcons have 6 sacks on the season. The Broncos, I think, have at least 3 or 4 games where they've got 6 or more sacks in individual games. Like, they rush the passer extremely. I may be exaggerating just a little bit there, but they get after the quarterback really well. And they've done it consistent every week this season, even against Justin Herbert. When they're not getting off the field on third downs, they were racking up at least 3 or 4 sacks in that game. So the Broncos need to make sure that they make Bryce Young's life miserable out there in the pass rush department.
Yeah, and I'll say this too, man. Like, the Panthers actually have been really good when it comes to pass blocking. I believe they're now 7th in PFF's pass blocking stat after being one of the worst in the NFL the last couple of years. And your first 2 keys, running the ball. Panthers are the worst run defense in the league. When it comes to red zone, the Panthers are 28th in the NFL, giving up a red zone touchdown 70% of the time. So, and they're also the worst as far as scoring percentage defense, the worst scoring defense. So scoring percentage is going to be like that. 55.8% of opponents' drives have ended up in a score. So for Carolina, if you're going to let them score half the time, let it be field goals, not touchdowns, which has been kind of the struggles. It's very interesting to hear, like, Broncos have some weaknesses offensively. There are also weaknesses for the Panthers, vice versa, defensively. Which one's going to give on Sunday? So it should be an interesting game. I'm certainly far more excited now watching Bryce Young get another opportunity than I would have been watching Andy Dalton go out there and get another opportunity. And then Dalton, by the way, Canales did say that he's day-to-day the rest of the week to see if he can be the backup. So it's still possible we see Andy Dalton on Sunday. I find it interesting if he's going to be the backup. I mean, they don't have a third quarterback that they could really go to. They would have to elevate Jack Plummer from the practice squad, who is a undrafted free agent rookie out of Louisville, and he didn't really inspire too much confidence in the preseason until the final game, but still. So they're kind of really hoping Andy can at least be that emergency guy who would actually still be active, but we'll see how it plays out. So excited to see what Bryce can do. Hopefully it goes well. Hopefully it gives me something to talk about. Some controversy here in Carolina, could use it, especially during a 1-6 season in which Vegas believes it's going to be a 1-7 season based off of the line. So fun things going on at Mile High on Sunday.
Yeah, like you said, in a lot of ways, it's the movable object against the stoppable force in so many different ways here with the Broncos offense against the Panthers defense. But Broncos country, Panthers fans, we appreciate y'all so much for making us part of your day, however you choose to do so. And if you know what, after making Locked On Broncos, Locked On Panthers your first listen of the day, see you on tomorrow's show for the next episode.